Okay, we are in my very, very dirty buffing room, and buffing is just, there's no way around it. It is just a dirty job. So I thought I would give just a brief, somewhat brief, description of how I go about buffing. No, you can't get up, because I'm fixing to roll around. I don't want to roll on your feet. So I have different grits. Each buffer is for a different grit, and each pad is a different degree of stiffness. Now, I start on the right, I don't know why, I just did. To start buffing, you have to be at least 800 grit on the knife. And you can't, you can't talk yourself into moving on to the next sanding grit and it's really easy to do, to convince your brain will work on you. Sanding is very tiresome. And if you're not going to sand the previous grit out 101%, then buffing is just a waste of your time. And I've learned this through trial and error. There's just no simple, easy way around sanding the previous grit out on your knife before you even get to the buffer. So if you're not doing an absolute 101% job of sanding the grits, the previous grit, let's just say I take my knife off the belt grinder at 120, and then the whole knife gets sanded at 150, 180, 220, 320, 400, 500, 600, and 800. And each grit previous has to be sanded out, absolutely, or else I'm telling you, buffing is a complete waste of your time if you don't do that. So 99.9% of your efforts on getting a mirror shine are with sanding. Buffing is 10% of it. So here we go. This is a high-speed jet buffer. It's, let's see. Yeah, 900 to 3,600 RPMs. 1 horsepower. And believe me, it is 1 horsepower. And you need your first buffer to be the strongest buffer, because you really got to bear into it. Now, this is a brand new pad. It's actually 2 pads. And don't drink that. That's what I dip my knives in. There's water everywhere. Don't drink that water. Good Lord. So anyway, the polishing compound that I use is Black Magic, sold by Jantz, and it's black emery, and it is the coarsest stuff known to man so far, as polishing this goes. And this is a hard buffer here. It's a hard pad, and it really digs into the metal. So you start on this, and when you get a good start on your blade and you can start seeing a little shine, you move to a softer pad, which is still the black emery. And this is also it's not a new pad. I just switched it from one side to the other. And you go to this pad, and then when you've got it as shiny as you can possibly get it on this machine, then you're stepping up a grit on this machine. And this is a hard pad, and that is a softer pad. And this is same company. This is green Rouge. And the way you do it is you just touch it on there. You don't need a whole lot. You need a little bit frequently. And I have made the mistake of overdoing it, which is why I had to replace them. If you put too much on, you're just wasting your grit, and you're wasting your elbow grease trying to bear into it. So this is the green. I start on this. This is a hard wheel. That's a softer wheel. And when you got it as shiny as this wheel will get it, when it's not making any more difference, you move to the softer wheel. And then when you've got it as shiny as it will get on this wheel, then you move over to the next buffer. Oh, by the way, these are, there's no way this is 1 horsepower. Hold on, I'm gonna sneeze. Woo, it's dusty in here. This is a very, very dusty job. Okay, So this is just a cheap little Amazon, you know, same thing with that. Where'd I get that? CMT, just cheap. It's nowhere near 1 horsepower and nowhere near that RPM. Maybe it's that RPM, but the second you touch something against it, it slows down. So it's not very important. It's not terribly important that these are high dollar. The first one has to be 1 horsepower or better, because you really got to bear into it to get the initial grind buffing to start. So there we go. Green here, black there, hard wheel, soft wheel. Then we move over to this, and this is where your work on these 2 previous buffers, this is where it really starts to show. Now this is it's a soft wheel, and this is a soft wheel that I don't put anything on. This wheel, I put something called Pink Scratchless from Chance, knifemaking.com. And this is where the shine really comes out. And it removes a little bit of cloud. The green Rouge leaves just a little bit of cloudiness on the metal, and the Pink Scratchless removes the cloudiness. And then you come over here to a dry buff, and you just lightly touch it on the dry buff. And there we go. That's my polishing method. Right now I'm fixing to, I'm debating on whether I should pull the seam out. It's right at the edge. And, but I'll have to do 1, 2, 3, I have to do 4 of them. So I haven't decided what I'm gonna do here. I may just order a whole new buff, because this is basically a new one here. And you know, I don't go through these very often. These last a pretty good amount of time. All right, there we go. That's how I buff my knives out. You got to start with a finish that is absolutely scratchless, or you're wasting your time buffing. And you don't know that you have left scratches until you start buffing it. And that is a real heartbreaker, to have to go back to your shop and resand. And the big scratches from 320 on below, you can't polish out on this. But from 400 up, you can. So I'm not saying you don't have to be diligent about sanding out your scratches from 400 up. But if you spend a couple hours on this, instead of going back to the shop and starting over with the sanding, you can polish 400 and up scratches out with a black emery. You can't with a green. So that's my method, and there is no tutorial that I know of. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different opinions on the YouTube about polishing. And there are tutorials, but it's not about knife polishing. It's about, you know, polishing motorcycle parts and soft aluminum on green Rouge. And there's no solid, good information out there about polishing knives. So I hope I've added to the information out there. And everything I've learned through trial and error. I also have wire wheels, and I only use these wire wheels for my file knives now, because after you heat treat and temper a file knife, there's no way to get the heat treating schmutz out of the grooves and all that unless you've got a wire wheel. All right, thanks for watching. Here's another tidbit of information. You can take a hard pad and turn it into a soft pad, but what you do is you take a razor knife and you cut these threads all the way around, and it allows these to mushroom out a little more, and it just makes it a softer pad. And I've done 2. Some of these are made up with multiple pads. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 pads, but they're stuck together in the middle. And another thing, wear a mask. It is a terribly dusty job, and you do not want to breathe that stuff. It's bad for you. So wear a mask And I mean, not just a COVID mask. Wear a really good respirator type mask that seals on your face and prevents the particles from getting in your lungs. All right, I'm gonna finish pulling this apart and put it on my machine. And there's the last thing I didn't tell you about is something called a rake. And I'll show you that when I put this back on, because in some areas this is hard where I use too much product and it cakes on. So you can get that off, and it's a rake. And when I get this all put back together, I'll show you how that works. This is a rake, and it's a very messy job. I'm just going to touch this so you see, but it really takes two hands, and you don't want to lean this in, you want to lean it back. Otherwise it'll snatch it right out of your hand. Yeah, really messy. It's going to take two hands. Okay, the last thing. Have a bucket of water to dunk your work in, because especially the lower grit, the black emery, it will sure enough make it red hot. And what I do is I polish my knife mirror shine before I heat treat and temper. And most people just looking at it, not understanding, would say, what a complete waste of time. Here's the thing. If you don't do that, and you go ahead and heat treat your knife and then polish it, if you have a scratch, you can't sand it out. So that's the reason I polish my blades before heat treatment. That way, if I come across a scratch that I can't buff out, I go back to my shop and I sand it out, whatever grit the scratch is. I go back to that grit and start over. And if you heat treat your knife before you buff it and you come across a scratch, it won't buff out. That's it. The scratch is there and it's not coming out. So, alrighty. Have a Dunkin' barrel, because it will get hot. Okay, there we go. It's a dirty, dirty job. And this is from me just hitting that with a rake. So all my pads now are refreshed, and I can't wait to get to work on my next polish knife. So my wife is making cookies, right? Is that what you're making, hon? Okay, she's making cookies, but there's only 4 sticks of butter. Are you sure 4 sticks is going to be enough?
Yeah, I'm making oatmeal cookies for me, and peanut butter and Reese's for you, and chocolate chip oatmeal for me.
Okay. And we'll just have to squeak by on 4 sticks of butter.
And
cake.
Strawberry cake.
Strawberry cake.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to recap. I'm home because I suggest if you're going to rake your wheels, that be the last thing you do before you come home and take a shower, because it is really the messiest thing. It's messier than polishing blades.
Did you touch anything?
I didn't. I came and went right in. I touched the shower door.
You got on my bike.
I did.
Oh.
So you'll have to steam clean your motorcycle.
I bet.
Polishing blades is the second messiest thing I do. Messier than sanding. And then raking the wheels is the first messiest thing I do. I mean, it will just cover you and stuff. So that's one suggestion, is make it the last thing you do before you jump in the shower. And ventilation, a respirator, and be sure you don't put the top edge of your work in the wheel, because it will sure enough snatch it right out of your hands and send it across the room.
You know this how?
Oh, I know this how because I'm an expert at having a knife snatched out of my hands. But not anymore. I'm past that now. But when I first started polishing blades, yeah, there was a few I had to go back and start sanding all over just because I let the buffer grab a hold of it and send it across the room and put a scratch in it. Okay, so that's all I got. We'll see you.